Hello there, welcome to lesson number 2 in our series on using FluidDesigner for 3D printing to create some basic earring objects. Today's lesson we're going to show you how you can use an icosphere to create a simple earring. So if you start off FluidDesigner, first thing you need to do is to go to Learning Projects, and we're doing earrings, so it's Jewellery Projects Earrings. And we're doing lesson number 2, so it's O2, a wireframe icosphere earring. And I'm just going to switch on the screencast keys, so any key presses I make should be displayed in the window here. And just remind you that there is the help window here where you can follow the instructions if you don't want to watch the video. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to add a mesh, and we're just going to add an icosphere. So add mesh and icosphere. So this is just a basic object, of which there are many in FluidDesigner. And as you can see at the moment, that's pretty small. So it's 2mm by 2mm by 2mm approximately. X is actually 1.9. If we go view and zoom to selected, there you are. You can see what the icosphere looks like. It's not quite a sphere. It's a sphere with a lot of flat sides to it, essentially. And what we need to do is we need to resize it so it looks like the object at the bottom there, and then we need to hollow it out. And how do we do that? Well, first of all, we're going to resize it. So if you point the mouse at the object itself, this is a good way of doing this, and press S on the keyboard. S on the keyboard is for scale. And then if you move the mouse out, you'll see that the object scales up in size. And what you need to do is you need to look at the values in the panel here. And what we want is dimensions of about 20 or 25 millimeters, that sort of size. Okay, so yeah, that'll do at the moment. Yeah, so we've got 25 millimeters for Y and Z. And once you've done that, you can then press the left mouse button and select that. So we've resized it. Now, one of the things to always remember in FluidDesigner, when you resize objects, if you're going to do printing, which is what we're interested in, you always need to open up the toolbox. I press the plus sign at the top. You can press the T on the keyboard, that will open and close the toolbox, or you can click on the plus sign up here. And whenever you resize anything, these values here, these vector values for X, Y and Z change in FluidDesigner. They need to be reset to 1. We need to reset the scale. So we hold down the control key and press A, and we apply the scale. So you see a little tick saying that the scale has been applied. It's something that's going on in the background that you don't need to worry about too much, but you do need to remember to do it. If you don't, you could have problems with printing. Okay, so there's our icosphere resized, and the scale set back to 1. And what we want to do now is to create this wireframe feature of the object. We can do that in FluidDesigner in the Properties window. What we need to do is to click on the modifiers icon, that's this spanner here, and we're going to add a modifier, and the modifier we're going to add is a wireframe modifier. And if I just open up the panel there, you can see there are various options in here, and you can see what it's done. It's taken out the faces of the object, and it's left us with this wireframe, exactly as the modifier says. And what we want to do now is to apply some thickness to this wireframe. So at the moment it's 0.02, so if I just click on here, that's moving it very, very slowly. If I hold the left mouse button and drag, still not moving it really quick, but you can see it's actually adding some thickness to it as I'm dragging the mouse to the right now and increasing the thickness. What we actually want to do is to set it with a thickness value of 1. That's the thickness we want to apply in this instance. So, and that's actually the maximum value that we can set for this thickness. And we want to leave the offset at 0, because what that means is the original wireframe the thickness is applied on the inside and on the outside, so it's applied evenly. There's also a box here that says tick even thickness, and if we zoom in you can see as we switch that on and off, it does change the appearance of the object. These other options here, relative thickness, you can see that makes a right mess of it. We've got no holes in it anymore. And boundary, well, that doesn't appear to make any changes in this instance. These options here, you do need to just play around with them and just see what effect they have. Does it look better? Does it look more even when you tick even thickness or not? And it will vary depending upon other values you set, the offset and the thickness. In this instance we want even thickness, and that's it basically. We've wireframed it, we've applied a thickness. What we need to do now is to confirm this thickness, and we do that in FluidDesigner by going to Tools, Object Tools, and convert it to a mesh. The modifier disappears now, it's been applied, so we can't change that anymore, so don't do that until you are happy with the shape that you've got. So that's our simple wireframe icosphere earring. So we can now delete the original object, so we just highlight that and press X on the keyboard and delete it. And our object now we created in this lesson, we need to save it. And we always say in FluidDesigner, go to File and Save As. Just go up through the menu system and look for My Projects, Jewellery Projects Earrings. And we're going to save lesson 02 as this wireframe icosphere earring, and we save that as a Blender file. Now we can't actually print Blender files, so what we need to do is we need to export this as a wavefront object, and we like to save them on the desktop. So it's lesson 02 wireframe icosphere earring, and we save this in a printable file format, OBJ object format. But before you try and print such an object, we always recommend you go to Netfab Basic, which you can download free from the internet. And if you go to Project and Open, and go to the desktop and open the wireframe icosphere earring. Now we haven't got any warning red triangles, but we always recommend that you go to Extras and repair the part. Netfab Basic will triangulate the mesh, so this line here for example, and this line going across this face, this line here, they've all been added by Netfab Basic. But if we just move the window across and if we just click update, you can see there are no border edge problems, no orientation and no holes, which is a good sign. We've used a mathematical object. The icosphere is a mathematical object. We've tried to keep it even in the design, so we wouldn't expect problems. As you push the boundaries with FluidDesigner, you will get more and more problems here, but Netfab Basic does a really good job of repairing all sorts of weird and wonderful shapes that you create. So we would recommend that you do run automatic repair and you execute it, and just click update again. Still no problems, still just one shell. So apply the repair and remove the old part. And now we can save that. So we go to Part, Export as a wavefront object, export it to the desktop, and it's the repaired file, and that's the file that's in the printable file format now. Now if we go back to FluidDesigner, one of the reasons that we've shown you how to produce this object is that there are a lot of built-in mathematical shapes in FluidDesigner. So if I just go to File and New, and I'll just shut those panels down, I don't want those at the moment. There are lots and lots of other types of simple wireframe type earrings that you could create in FluidDesigner. So for example, if you just go to Add Mesh and Cube, let me just zoom to selected, slightly odd colour, black. If I just go to Material, that'll change it for me. So you could, for example, you could take this simple cube. If you want, you can scale it up, just pressing S on the keyboard and scale it up to a size that suits you. You obviously do need to check it out in the properties panel, so that's 10 millimeters. And always when you resize, notice that the vector value changes, so always do Control A and reset the scale. And you could then quickly go to modifiers, add a modifier, add a wireframe modifier, change the thickness to 1 and tick even thickness. And so there's another quick wireframe object, mathematical object, just a cube. If we delete that one, I'll just show you one or two others. So add mesh. There is the UV sphere, which is a more rounded version of the icosphere. You could do the same thing with a torus. But if you actually go down to math function and go to solid, in the panel here there are a number of other mathematical shapes which are predefined in FluidDesigner. Now again, you would have to scale these because this is only 1mm at the moment, so you would need to scale it up. But there's a pyramid shape which you could also wireframe. That's the hexahedron again. Octahedron, so that's more of a kind of diamond type shape. Again, you could modify that. And icosahedron, again, different, slightly different from the icosphere. It's got slightly less faces. We can change the size in here as well. This is another way of resizing them. And you can change the vertices. So if I just change the value there, you can see what we're doing is we're flattening off the corners and creating more faces. So I'm just holding the mouse button down and changing the shape. So there's all sorts of weird and wonderful shapes you can come up with. And similarly, you can change the value of edge truncation. And so you can come up with a whole gamut of different shaped objects there. And always remember to do Control A and apply the scale. And then you just need to go to wireframe modifier again. Now that one didn't quite work. I probably need to scale it up even more. No, doesn't do it. Okay, so clearly, you do need to play around. You're not always going to get something that works. Let me set that back down to 0.01 or something like that. You can see. Now clearly these are going to have to be thick enough to print. So some of these objects, you're not actually going to be able to print them. You do need a thickness of about 0.6 or 0.8 millimeters. Depends on what you're printing, what material you want to print in. So you can't just print absolutely anything. You do need to size these up to a certain value. So some of these shapes, you just can't print. Okay, so that's the end of today's lesson, giving you some ideas on how you can create, how you can use the wireframe modifier to create some simple earrings. Thank you.